Hi, Jennifer Jean here. I'm super excited about publishing my collection, Object Lesson, of course, but I'm also super excited about that collection's companion book, which is coming out at the same time on January 11th. And that companion book is called Object Lesson, A Guide to Writing Poetry. Today, I want to talk a little bit about that companion guide. So when I was teaching free to write classes, I wanted to put together a guide for other teachers of free to write. So a few years ago, when I began to write the poems in Object Lesson, I realized that I wanted to empower human trafficking survivors and other folks who've experienced trauma to write poems of their own about these topics. Those are the topics I was writing about, and I am not a human trafficking survivor. So I knew, I'm just writing from the point of view of a researcher, an observer, someone who has experienced trauma, but not that specific trauma. So I wanted, as I said, to empower those women and folks to write their own stories, tell their own stories. And so I created this sort of organization. It's not like formally incorporated or anything. It's not a 501c3. It's just something I put together so that I could teach from it. And I called it Free to Write. And I did some very successful fundraisers towards it. A lot of poets were involved. They lent their books to be perks sent out to donors that help make these free to write writing workshop programs happen. I'm so grateful to them. So what was going on when I would do those free to write classes was I was incorporating all my knowledge from teaching in higher education to teach mostly women in organizations such as safe houses and then some other various places, to write these poems with some guidance from me. And they weren't necessarily writing about trauma, actually. They were just writing whatever stories they wanted to write about. So when I was putting together these classes, I kept a lot of notes, and I always knew that I wanted to compile these notes and the different prompts I put together and the poems I used into some kind of writing guide so that other teachers that wanted to teach these sort of non-traditional populations, trauma affinity groups and things like that, safe house groups, any kind of group that isn't in a higher education setting, they wanted to teach these folks, they'd have a sort of compressed booklet or guide that they could follow in order to do that. And that was always my vision. I actually had to put the Free to Write program and classes on hold for a while. That isn't to say I'll never take up those classes again. I probably will. So when my book of poems, Object Lesson, was accepted by Lilly Press this year, I was offered the opportunity to put together a guide, and it would be just like this free to write guide I had in mind so many years before. So I was so happy about this. My editor there, Eileen Cleary, offered me this opportunity, and I was just ecstatic. So I think, though, that the reason that she had actually offered the opportunity was to give a companion to the book of poems itself originally. That's my understanding of why she was making this offer. Because this is a book of poetry that's about a difficult topic. It's about human trafficking mostly, and objectification, and all kinds of, and specific kind of human trafficking, sex trafficking. That's a very difficult topic. So having a companion guide would help for teachers to teach this, or for folks that just wanted a deeper understanding. So there was that aspect to it. And as we were talking together, Eileen and I, and as I was thinking about how I wanted to put this companion book together, I remembered that Free to Write project that I had on hold. And I decided to mesh the two ideas together. And I really am so excited about what came out of it. So meshing the two together means that yes, the companion guide is, as it says in the subtitle, a guide to writing poetry, but it uses all the poems in Object Lesson to teach how to write poetry, so that a group could, have the poetry book, and read that, and then go through the companion guide and write some poems as they go along and try to understand more deeply about the issues that are brought up in the Object Lesson poems. So I want to add that the guide was also heavily influenced by my teaching in the Mass Poetry Student Day of Poetry sessions and days that I had the wonderful opportunity to do in the honor of teaching. So this guide was also heavily influenced by all the times that I taught with Mass Poetry. I had the honor of teaching with them at their Student Day of Poetries and other kinds of events. And I also kept a lot of notes. That's just how I do things. Kept a lot of notes on the kind of lessons that I taught, because they were very compressed lessons about poetry writing. And sometimes there were lessons that could fit in, how to write a poem. And then I only had 1 hour or 2 hours to do that kind of lesson. I mean, that's a lot to put into one thing. So I had honed over many, many years how to teach, a compressed lesson like that. In using other poems besides my own. Of course, I didn't in those cases use my own poems. So I also took a lot of what I learned from those experiences and threw those things, those lesson plans, into the guide, which covers line breaks and language and use of language, and as well imagery, and also the revision process and how to run a workshop. So in the guide, as I said, I do use my own poems, but I also offer, little segments where I suggest substitute poems. So other people's poems that fit right into the lesson, just in case people don't want to just use this guide looking at just my poems. So I created a media kit that explains all about this guide, and I'm going to briefly show it to you and go over a few of the little elements in it. Okay, so here it is. I want to point out right away in that top corner right there above the beautiful picture of the book. I think it's beautiful because the art was done by Julie Shematz, who's the founder of Beauty from Ashes, which is a survivor advocate group, teaches equine therapy, among many other things. In any case, right above that cover, it says here, free for trauma affinity groups. So this guide is free to anyone who is teaching at with any kind of group they consider a trauma affinity group. And all you have to do is contact me at jenniferjeanwriter@gmail.com, or you can contact Lily Poetry Review Books directly, and they can also provide you with a free PDF of the book. So right here, this is the description of the book right there. It's a straightforward, versatile guide to writing your best poetry using poems from Object Lesson. So I'm very open about the fact that you'll be utilizing my poems if you're following the book very directly. I received a wonderful, wonderful recommendation by Stephanie Clark, CEO of Amira. So Amira is a survivor advocacy group as well. They have the Amira Safe Houses. They have one in Massachusetts. They're opening up one in Connecticut, I believe. So they're a wonderful group. And Stephanie is also an author. She wrote Letters to an Activist, Discovering Hope in the Pursuit of Social Change. So she's awesome. And I'm so happy that she wrote this wonderful blurb. She says, I'm just going to read a really quick portion of it. I'm grateful for Jennifer's willingness to share her gift with others, empowering them to step into their past and take ownership over the pain and hurt. This guide is not only a practical approach to poetry writing, but it's a wonderful help for those who are in the world of emotional trauma recovery. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for that. So I go into, in this media guide, who this guide is for. I'm not going to go over that right now. If you want to look at if your purpose or your group is suitable for this kind of guide, then you can write to me, as I said, jenniferjeanwriter@gmail.com, to take a look at this list. And then, of course, I have my little picture, my little bio, and all my social media little contact things. So subscribers to my YouTube channel and my Patreon creative community know that this is what I call a POBIZ video. And what that means is I'm just talking about stuff that's in the writing world or the poetry writing world. In this case, I'm talking about a companion guide because I'm talking about my experience with the companion guide. And I just want to say right now, I recommend that you create a companion guide for your own collection. It's just awesome to do. It's an awesome resource for anyone who's studying your writing. I've always, because I've taught in higher education for almost 20 years, I've always thought of my books as being taught and studied, as well as just flat out read and enjoyed. Even the difficult topics I write about, I imagine readers just, straight up enjoying them. I write them for enjoyment and pleasure of reading. I try to write to that kind of quality. But the studying is also part of it. So I have those two goals going on. So if you're like me and you have that in mind, ask your publisher if they'll help you create a companion guide, or you can just create one yourself on a PDF and provide it. It would be amazing. As a higher ed teacher, if I was teaching a work by an author and then I went to their website, which I always do, check out their website, different links, I look up their interviews and stuff. And then if they just had a PDF that they had created themselves that was a guide to their book, I would be so happy about that. And it would make me more drawn to teaching their work. So that's a little bit of POBIZ information for all of you out there. But yeah, if you're a non-subscriber to my YouTube channel or my Patreon community, you might not have known that that's the kind of information that I give out. I give out a lot of that. I give out all these videos on, and sometimes written stuff and sometimes pictures, but a lot of videos, writing life tips. I give a lot of writing prompts and close readings. That's one of my favorite things to do, of my favorite poems, but also of my own poems, to show you the choices I made and why I made them. So you can get it from the so-called horse's mouth. So if that sounds interesting to you, become a subscriber to the YouTube channel, to my Patreon community. All you have to do is, if you're on YouTube, go to the description and there's a link in the description below and to the Patreon community, or you can go directly to patreon.com and type in Jennifer Jean Writer. That's it for today. Thank you so much, everyone. I look forward to engaging you all as together we help our poems become their best selves. Bye.